What we have here is we got bottom seal plates with a cut nail only. We do have a seal plate anchor, but it's not in the right distance, so we're not code compliance. So let's look at this real close, and then we're going to look at the code. This is what we have. As you can see, I've got a cut nail here, cut nail there, and I've got one of these connectors right here, probably about 8 inches from that plate. Now you can call this a mud seal, you can call it a sole plate, you can call it a seal plate. I guess it matters only to what part of the country you're from. I call it a seal plate. I'm talking about the plate that's in direct contact with the concrete. All right, we got that out of the way. Now let's just talk about the code. So we're going to be in I'm in the 2021 International Residential Code published by ICC. I'm looking over in section 403.1.6. So if you have your code book, I appreciate if you go along with me. There's also some additional information that's in the commentary. Remember, the commentary is just commentary, all right? Code is code. We go by the code. But I want you to look at it real close with me and all this and make sure we're all clear and on the same page. So when we're talking about 403.1.6, we're going to read that it says wood sole plates at all exterior walls on monolithic slabs, wood sole plates of braced wall panels at building interiors on monolithic slabs, and all wood seal plates shall be anchored to the foundation with a minimum 1/2 inch diameter anchor bolt, space not greater than 6 feet on center. There are alternatives, and we're going to get to that next. So here is our R section. You know, there's always an R or a but, isn't there? R approved anchors or anchor straps spaced as required to provide equivalent anchorage to 1/2 inch diameter anchor bolts. So that's the burden for the manufacturer. They got to prove that they meet the requirements and it has the equivalent anchorage of a 1/2 inch diameter bolt. There are many alternatives to bolts. You can use different kind of straps that are embedded in the concrete. You can also do some aftermarket, and that's what I think occurred in this, and at the end of the video we'll talk more about this. I do want you to look and just notice a couple of things. Make sure that when the bolts are in place they use the correct washer and nut as it's required when you use a bolt. On the right you're going to see another proprietary type bolt for anchorage when it's installed by the manufacturer's installation guide. Now what I see with the one on the right quite often is they drill out the hole, but then they don't blow out the loose dust, doesn't it? Now the problem you got is the inspector's not there when it's installed. Now if you're an inspector, I want you to take this to heart. The code does have very specific language that you have to be provided with the information you need to do the inspection. So when you get out there and you see some kind of a strap that you've never seen before, ask for the manufacturer's installation instructions. You have a right to have this information. How else are you going to know if it's been done right? Different manufacturers have very varying type of installation requirements. I have looked at paperwork on some of these different straps like you see on the right here in this photograph, and they go everywhere from 3'3" on center to 5 foot on center. So it makes a big difference. Now here are just two examples of what we're talking about with these type of alternative method anchors that are equivalent to 1/2 inch bolts. Again, these are two of the manufacturers and I've got their websites listed. There are many others, and these are more popular in the southeastern area where I'm from. But again, when you look these up and you look at the charts, you'll see that to get the equivalency of a 1/2 inch bolt, your spacing again can be vary from 3 feet to 5 feet quite often, and it must be installed in a certain manner. There also shows you a way that it shouldn't be installed and the proper fasteners to use. So again, you need that manufacturer's installation instruction guide with you when you do the inspection. All right, inspectors, you want a hammer, be careful what you get. Here's your hammer. I don't care which edition you're in. I'm in the 2021 IRC, section 106.1.2. This goes with anything that's in this code book when it says refer to manufacturer's installation instructions. Manufacturer's installation instructions as required by this code shall be available on the job site at the time of inspection. Shall is a mandatory term. It's not saying pretty please. They have to be made available. Where the code mandates that the manufacturer's installation instructions be followed, those instructions must be available on the job site. Well, there's one statement I can make beyond any doubt is that a cut nail does not meet the requirements of a 1/2-inch bolt. Now, what they did on this house, of course, they used the cut nails to hold the plates in and square everything up, which is typical. That's what they always do. Then they come in after the fact and they make sure the straps are all in place, and if they're not properly spaced or the cuts or the splices of the plates don't line up where the straps are, they go in, they add aftermarket bolts. We'll talk more about that again at the end of the video. But bottom line, cut nail does not meet the equivalent of a 1/2-inch bolt. Bolts shall extend not less than 7 inches into the concrete or the graded cells of concrete masonry units. The bolts shall be located in the middle third of the width of the plate, and a nut and washer shall be tightened on each anchor bolt. Now let's talk reality. Typically these bolts, when they're placed, they're not going to be in the middle third. Code requires that though. So that's something you need to look at. Typically I see them on the edges and sometimes barely on the edges. Another thing you see quite often is you don't see a washer or a bolt. Depending on what part of the country and you got to have that. And a lot of times we'll also see that the nut may not even be tightened down on these things. So keep an eye on that. Also, we're going to be talking about splices and when the bolts have to be located and that sort of thing. That'll be in your next slide. The code requires that whenever you have a splice like you see occurring here, that within 12 inches of that splice you have to have a bolt. Also, that for each section of plate that you have down, you've got to have at least 2 bolts, unless the section's less than 2 feet. So let's say we had a section of seal plate was only 3 foot long. Guess what? I got to have 2 bolts in it. If you look, you'll see in this photograph a really good example of what we're talking about, interior bearing walls. Interior bearing walls require a seal plate attachment the same as they do for the exterior walls. And if you look, you can tell by the eye joist that you're looking at the floor above and where the beam is that it goes to. Maybe a lamb beam, I'm not sure. It could just be another joist over there. But obviously that wall that you're seeing running right and left is a load-bearing wall. So that means that wall has to be positively attached to the concrete floor. Okay, guys, we're about to wrap this one up. So one thing I always like is when we talk about the anchorage, we get every now and then you get one of these old contractors, they'll speak up and they'll say, hey, we don't have earthquakes around here. I don't know why we got to do all this anchorage like you're requiring. Just let me clear that up real quick. There is no seismic design category A through E, maybe even E, and you can count all the other letters if you want to also in the alphabet, but there's no seismic design category that exempts having to have anchorage as required by the code. So that's just the way it is. Now what we had here, I'm going to give this inspector an excuse, although it's not a really good one. My thought is what we had going on was we had the framers came in and like they always do, they use cut nails to get everything squared and stood up. And they were planning to come in after the fact and add bolts. And I'm hoping maybe they do before the walls are insulated or anything like that. And I came in kind of right after the inspectors had been there and found out that it had passed inspection as I was walking through, just trying to take a couple of photographs for some videos. I wasn't trying to catch anybody, but I saw that the bolts were not done. My guess is the inspector was either in a hurry. They may have been looking more at the electrical and the mechanical systems and the plumbing than they were the framing at the time. I'm going to give them a little bit of an out that I'm hoping maybe before this thing gets the walls covered up, somebody catches it and fixes it. Maybe they'll even see this video. I don't know. But the bottom line is it's something that needs to be looked at and looked at closely. And everybody has a responsibility and a role to play in this entire process. So let's all try to work together. I appreciate your time and watching this little video. we ask please that you subscribe and like this video, share it with others. Thank you very much.